So I'm going to talk a little bit about two-factor authentication, a very quick introduction. Security is critically important. There are breaches of information systems, piracy, etc. in our community. It's not long, there have been so many breaches. It's a regular occurrence, and two-factor authentication is one way to address that. Every one of you, long before you had a cell phone, a smartphone, used two-factor authentication. Sticking a bank card into an ATM is two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication involves three components, oddly enough. It's knowledge factors, possession factors, and inherence factors. So this is something you know, something you own, and something you are. I know my password. I have a PIN card. I have certain biometric characteristics. And two-factor authentication is the combination of two of these three factors. It could be any combination of them. So knowledge factors, I have the passwords, and I combine that with the ATM card or a fob, or different biometric factors like thumbprints, etc. You can take any one of those three. And this is part of a complicated process which involves asking the user, one thing, and then confirming that as part of a conversation. So the systems interact with you in order to ensure that you are who you say you are. And there's kind of a flaw in this process because it's not simple. How many of you have forgotten your password? Oh wait, how do I get it back? Oh wait, now I need my phone. Oh, blah. What if I ask my partner? Maybe she knows what my password is. And the challenge with this is there was a study by the University of Maryland, Johns Hopkins. 25% of people who were surveyed used two-factor authentication all the time. 45% used it some of the time, but not all the time, and 28% never used it. And those of them who didn't use it all the time, basically the only reason that they used it was because it's required. And interestingly, in our community, there's only one university that absolutely requires two-factor authentication when logging into the system, and that's Stanford University. Every other university has that capability. Many of them are rolling it out, but they're not requiring it. So of course, and the more complicated this process is, the more problematic it is for people, and how tedious this process can become. And actually, if you layer on top of this, the European Central Bank has added on several layers to two-factor authentication by adding things that those factors need to be mutually independent. They can't depend on each other. So if you lose your phone, which is the one way that you get access, that's also how your passwords are maintained. There's a variety of ways in which two-factor authentication can take place. Some of them are obvious, like fobs and phones. Others are less obvious, like the browser specifications that you have, the tokens that exist on your system. All of those can contribute to making things easier. But this is a problem where two-factor authentication falls down. This is a login for one of the systems, and it asks what my highest level of education is. The problem is, if you search the internet, you can find out what my highest level of education is. The problem is, do you always answer these questions appropriately and accurately? No. Now, there's a variety of other ways. NISO uses voice print activation in order to get access to our bank accounts. So my voice gives me access to proceed, please verify me. That is an exceptionally secure method of accessing, which is different from a password. And interestingly, the NIST, the National Institutes for Science and Technology, they released a new guidance. They're the organization that does standards in this space. They released some guidance, and interestingly, They issued some guidance in terms of two-factor authentication using SMS. And they're actually recommending that they not use SMS as a two-factor because it's not secure. It is very easy to redirect that SMS message to a voice over IP system, and it's very easily hacked. But that is how most people think they're using two-factor authentication. I think one of the biggest challenges in the security space is that few users have an authoritative source. How many of you think you know security inside and out? Yeah. Most people have never gone through a course, never really studied authentication systems, how they work, how they can fail. There's a variety of really great resources. This is Stop, Think, Connect. It's a website run by the Homeland Security Department in cooperation with the banking industry and software communities with some basic information about how to protect your login information. Two-factor authentication is one element of that. I also encourage you to listen to a podcast called Security Now by the TWIT network, This Week in Tech. It's a weekly podcast, and it usually scares the hell out of me. And to end with another KCD cartoon that kind of epitomizes this challenge, there is so much bad information out there in the world, so be careful what you look for. And so with that, thank you. And I think I might have ended like maybe 20 seconds early.